has a box, a red leather box, and for centuries only one person in Britain has ever been allowed to open it, the monarch. Inside it, classified intelligence briefings, state papers, the documents that quietly run a country, and in 2026, that box did not go to Queen Camilla. It went to Princess Anne. Now, on the surface, that might sound like a small administrative detail, a scheduling decision, nothing to see here. But if you understand how the British monarchy actually works, underneath the ceremony, underneath the waving and the tiaras, you'll know that whoever holds the key to that box holds something close to the real engine room of the country. Who sees the intelligence? Who has the final word on legislation? Who is actually running things when the person wearing the crown cannot? And King Charles just handed that key to his sister, not his wife. Welcome to Royal Decode with Emma, where the royalty is always fresh, hot, and served at the perfect temperature. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why that happened, what it means for Camilla. Let's start with what Camilla actually has and what she does not. She is the queen consort. She sits beside the king at every state occasion. She is on paper one of the most powerful women in the country. She is his closest daily companion. And yet, when it comes to the actual machinery of governing Britain, she has been quietly, completely shut out. No red box, no classified briefings, no say in legislation. And here's the thing that makes this so striking. This was not an oversight. Nobody forgot to include her. This was a decision, a deliberate one, made by Charles himself. So the real question becomes, why? Why would a king deliberately exclude his own wife from the inner workings of his reign? To answer that, you have to understand the pressure Charles is currently under. King Charles is dealing with a serious health diagnosis, and he's been remarkably open about it publicly, more open than any monarch in living memory. But openness doesn't change the reality behind closed doors. A king undergoing ongoing medical treatment simply cannot also carry the full daily weight of governing. Something has to give. Someone has to step in. And on paper, the obvious answer is Prince William. He's the heir. He's the future king. Logically, he's next in line to pick up the administrative load while his father recovers. Except William can't. Not right now. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is dealing with her own serious health recovery. William has 3 young children who need their father present, emotionally, physically, every single day. And on top of that, he is already carrying the long-term psychological weight of knowing the crown is coming for him eventually. Ask him to also absorb the entire daily grind of running a monarchy in crisis on top of everything else? That's not sustainable. That would break almost anyone. So Charles looked elsewhere. He looked at his sister. And once you understand who Princess Anne actually is, this starts to feel less like a backup plan and more like the only choice that ever made sense. Here's the first reason. Anne has lived through the exact same era of British history. The same political crises, the same prime ministers, the same Commonwealth turmoil. She doesn't need anyone to explain the historical context of a constitutional crisis to her, because she was there when it happened the first time. That kind of lived experience cannot be taught. It cannot be fast-tracked. You either have it or you don't. But here's the second reason, and honestly, it's the bigger one. Anne has zero dynastic ambition. None. And in royal politics, that single fact changes everything. Because of the old rules of male preference succession, the rules that existed when Anne and Charles were children, Anne kept getting pushed further down the line of succession every time one of her younger brothers was born. Despite being the second child of the late queen, it was unfair, it was outdated. Everyone agrees on that now. But here's the twist. That old injustice is exactly what makes Anne the perfect person to hold real power today, because she has no path to the throne. None. And no interest in one. So when Anne walks into a room and opens that red box, when she delivers a message from the king to the prime minister, nobody anywhere suspects she's doing it to build power for herself. There's no faction behind her, no rival camp using her as a pawn. She's simply the messenger. And everyone, from the government to the public to Charles himself, knows it. She is trusted completely because she has nothing to personally gain, and that trust didn't appear overnight. This wasn't Charles waking up one day and deciding on a whim that his sister should run things. This was decades in the making, engineered quietly by their mother. Throughout the second half of the 20th century, whenever the Commonwealth hit a moment of real political instability, genuine crisis, not photo op territory, the late Queen sent Anne. Not for the pleasant ceremonial tours, for the tense ones, the delicate ones. The ones where actual decisions had to be made on the ground, in real time, with the Queen unable to be there in person. That's not royal tourism. That is a decades-long apprenticeship in actual statecraft. And by the time Elizabeth was approaching the end of her life, she had already built the entire framework for what was coming next. In late 2022, shortly before she died, the late Queen made one final, quietly brilliant move. She orchestrated an amendment to the Regency Acts through Parliament, formally adding both Anne and Prince Edward to the list of working counselors of state for life. Now, that might sound like a dry legal technicality. It wasn't. It solved a massive problem that nobody was saying out loud. Because by that point, the existing list of people who could legally step in and exercise the monarch's powers had become, politically speaking, radioactive. Prince Harry had removed himself from royal life entirely. Prince Andrew was unusable after his own scandals. So, if something happened to Charles, the people technically eligible to step in were people the institution absolutely did not want anywhere near real power. Elizabeth fixed that, permanently, legally, in a way nobody could challenge, dispute, or walk back later. She was, in effect, telling the family, when my son becomes king and the pressures of the crown catch up with him, and they will, Anne is his safety net, and nobody gets to argue about it. But here's the part that really tells you everything. This wasn't sudden. The late Queen had been laying breadcrumbs for years, honors and titles that, looked at individually, seems like nice gestures. Looked at together, they tell a very different story. In 1987, Elizabeth gave Anne the title of Princess Royal, an ancient title that can only be held by one person at a time traditionally given to the eldest daughter of the monarch. It's not just a nice name. It comes with an unspoken expectation, a lifetime devoted to the institution, full stop. In 1996, Anne was invested as a Knight of the Thistle, Scotland's highest order of chivalry, not a ceremonial nod. Anne had spent years doing real, unglamorous work across Scotland. Community welfare, charitable infrastructure, the kind of work that doesn't make headlines. The honor was the nation saying, "We see you, and we know you understand this country in a way that goes far beyond photo ops." And then, at Charles's coronation in 2023, he made a choice that, if you were watching closely, said everything. He named Anne his gold stick in waiting, a centuries-old role traditionally given to whoever the monarch trusts most with their personal safety. Picture it. Anne, in full military uniform, on horseback, riding directly behind Charles's gold state coach through the streets of London. In front of the entire world. That wasn't nostalgia. That was Charles publicly putting his trust on the record, for everyone to see, before any of this Regency conversation had even gone public. Okay, quick pause because I want to know something, just for fun. Right now, as you're listening to this, what are you actually doing? Are you lying in bed about to fall asleep on me? Are you eating something while you watch? And if so, what is it? Driving? Folding laundry? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely love seeing where people are when they're tuning into these stories. Now let's talk about Timothy. Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence, Anne's husband, came into royal life back in the mid-1980s as a young naval officer serving as an equerry to Queen Elizabeth II. He wasn't famous, he wasn't seeking attention. He was simply there, inside the machinery, quietly watching what it actually took to support someone like Anne through a punishing schedule. And Elizabeth noticed. In 2011, she made him a Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order, essentially the late Queen's personal thank you for loyal, close service. But recently, Charles went further. He elevated Timothy to Knight Grand Cross of the Royal Victorian Order, the absolute highest rank in that entire honor system. This isn't a government honor. It's a personal gift, directly from the king, completely separate from any official process. Charles was saying, in the clearest possible terms, I see what you've done for 30 years. I see what you mean to my sister. And I am putting you in the smallest, most trusted circle around this family. For a man who has spent 3 decades standing exactly 2 steps behind his wife, never asking for a title, never courting a headline, that is enormous. And now, here's where the story takes a turn that connects everything back to Camilla in a way you almost certainly didn't see coming. Rewind to the early 1970s, long before Camilla Parker Bowles became queen consort, long before she became the woman Charles spent decades fighting to marry. She was with Andrew Parker Bowles, and before that, Andrew Parker Bowles was in a real, serious relationship with Princess Anne. They were genuinely connected, shared interests, shared passions, horses, equestrian life, the whole world that came with it. By most accounts, it was a real romance. But it ended, not through scandal, but because of the religious rules of the British Constitution at the time. Andrew was Catholic. Marriage between him and a Protestant princess simply wasn't permitted under the law as it stood, so they parted. with dignity, by all accounts. Anne and Andrew remained close friends for decades afterward, even after he went on to marry Camilla. Anne, meanwhile, married Mark Phillips, a marriage that ultimately didn't last. And eventually, she found her way to Timothy, the man who had quietly been there, in the background the entire time. Now, here's the part that really matters. In 2005, when Charles finally married Camilla after all those years of public controversy, the palace faced an awkward question of protocol. Under the old rules, a new wife of the future king would normally outrank the king's blood relative sisters in official precedence. The late queen said no. She issued a formal amendment to the household's order of precedence, a decree stating that whenever Charles was not present, Camilla was required to curtsy to Princess Anne. In the language of the royal court, where every bow, every curtsy, every inch of positioning means something. That was not a small gesture. That was the late queen drawing a line in the sand. A quiet but unmistakable statement that decades of service and royal blood would always outrank a newly acquired marital title. It told the entire household, in no uncertain terms, Camilla may have the king's heart, but Anne has the crown's respect. So when you put all of this together, the red box, the counselors of state amendment, the honors, the curtsy decree from 2 decades ago, Camilla's current position starts to look less like an accident and more like the latest chapter in a story that's been quietly running for over 50 years, and there's one more layer to it: the shadow of Diana. Camilla has spent her entire time in this family, trying to navigate the public's long memory of her role in Charles and Diana's marriage. Decades have passed, but that weight has never fully lifted. And now, watching Anne be publicly celebrated, adored, even while she herself is quietly moved away from anything resembling real power, that has to land differently, heavier. She's married to the king, but she is not trusted with the things that actually matter to the running of the country. And the public, by and large, already seems to know it. Which brings us to something that genuinely shifted public opinion. A single moment from a documentary that reframed how an entire nation sees Princess Anne. It came from the BBC documentary covering Charles's coronation year, an unusually intimate look inside the monarchy during one of its most vulnerable stretches. In it, Anne talked about her mother's final days at Balmoral. She revealed that the late queen had actually been anxious, not about dying, but about the logistics of dying there, the disruption it would cause, the burden it would place on the government, on the family, on everyone. And Anne told her, simply, don't worry about that. Spend your last days where you want to be. You've earned that. But the moment that really landed, the one people still talk about, was when Anne described watching the imperial state crown being lifted off her mother's coffin during the funeral. And she admitted to feeling something close to relief. Not because she didn't love her mother, not because she wasn't grieving, but because she understood in that exact moment that her mother's decades-long burden, the one she had carried since she was 25 years old, had finally ended. That kind of honesty about death, about duty, about what service actually costs a person, is something you almost never hear from a working royal, and it changed how people saw her, not as a stiff, dutiful aunt in the background, but as someone who understands, on a deeply human level, exactly what this institution takes from the people inside it. That's part of why, when opinion polls ask the British public who they trust most in the Say family, Anne consistently lands right at the top, alongside Catherine and alongside the memory of her mother. And the younger generation clearly feels it too. William and Catherine have made their respect for Anne unmistakable. They have repeatedly stepped back, physically, visibly, to let her take the spotlight during major occasions. And that's not nothing. In a family where positioning is everything, choosing to yield the center of attention sends a message. We don't see her as competition. We see her as the person doing the actual work. And for William specifically, Anne's elevation is something close to a relief. It takes pressure off him at the exact moment he needs it most. While he's trying to be a present father, a supportive husband, and prepare, eventually, for a role he isn't ready to fully step into yet. Anne taking on the heavy administrative load doesn't threaten him. It protects him. So here's where all of this leaves us. The old version of the British monarchy ran on one core idea: maintain the illusion. Never let the public see the cracks. Pretend everything is fine always, no matter what. Charles and Catherine have, in their own ways, quietly abandoned that approach. Charles has been open about his health in a way no monarch before him ever was. Catherine has spoken honestly about her recovery. The institution, for possibly the first time in its modern history, is saying, this is real life. These are real challenges. And here's how we're actually handling them. And inside that new honesty, placing Anne at the center of the day-to-day machinery isn't a crisis. It's the opposite. It's the monarchy being practical. Charles isn't pretending he can do it all. He's sharing the burden with the one person whose loyalty has never once been in question. For the public, the image of Anne, steady, unglamorous, simply present, standing at the center of all this is reassuring precisely because she is a known quantity. She shows up. She does the work. She doesn't want anything for herself. That's rare. And in an institution built almost entirely on appearances, it might end up being the most valuable thing of all. So that's where things stand right now. A quiet, 50-year story finally surfacing into public view, all because of one box, one key, and one decision about who gets to hold it. If you found this one interesting, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. There's a lot more of this royal world worth digging into, and I'm just getting started. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Camilla saw this coming? Or is this the moment it really hits her? Until the next cup of royal tea, take care.